Welcome back, YouTubers, and in today's episode we are going to be building the roof structure. We've got 6x2s and each one needs to have notches to fit within the steel RSJs, and there's a lot to do, so I suppose we should just get on with it. Let's go. Like everything else we've been doing in this build series, there's nothing particularly complicated, and this bit is pretty simple as well, to be honest. The difficulty comes in when we get into the steel beams. So we have what's called a web, and we need our 6x2 to fit in there. So what we have to do is, and that's upside down, what we have to do is we have to notch a little bit out the top and a slightly bigger bit out the bottom, and then that will slide in there like that. And as you can see, that's flush with the bottom of the joist, which is perfect because that means that the ceiling will be able to fix to that and run underneath all of those beams. And on top it's a little bit low, but because we've got furring pieces, which are basically bits of wood that are slightly angled to create the fall, we shouldn't have really any problems. Once we put those in, we should be fine for the sterling board going on top of that. I mean, we're only talking 2 or 3 mil, so that's what we got to do today. So the ones on the end are quite straightforward because they only need one bit notching out. The middle 2 sections require notches on both ends, and then obviously the other one only needs notches on the one end. So they're not difficult, fairly time consuming. And then the end pieces that go next to the wall, I'll come back to that and show you how we're going to set those out when we get there. Let's go and get some cut first. When it comes to setting your roof joists out, what I generally do is I'm going to have one in the edge here, but probably like 50 mil in about here, and then have some little bits going onto this sole plate. And then what we've got to remember is from this corner down here, 1.2 is a sheet of plasterboard, so the middle of one of our joists has to be at 1.2, and then we'll work 400s back, and then from the 1.2 we'll be able to then go 400 centres, and then that gives us our point where we get to the other side. So we're forever constantly picking up a sheet of plasterboard, laying it this way. Okay, so I'm just going to do that now. Let's go. So with the joist positions marked on this side, I'm not so worried about marking them on the beam, but I now know that I need to cut 9 for this, well, for each bay, if you like. There's going to be 9 across, so I'm just going to have to get on with cutting those now. Let's go. Okay, so I've cut the first 9 joists. They're all exactly the same measurement. For me it's 2230 millimeters, and I've got my template of what I need to notch out of each of these ends. So I'm going to use my jigsaw to do that, and I'm going to use this as a template just to lay on it and draw around, and then cut it out with a jigsaw. So let's do that. Okay, so I have cut and notched the ends out of the first 9 joists, and my wife has cut 18 150mm Noggins, and they're going to go along this edge, and you'll see what I'm going to do now. So on here, on the first joist, I have marked 150 to this point, and this is where the first noggin is going to go, and then every 400. So basically, although the wall plate and steel will be taking the weight of this timber, so that we've got something to pick up the edge of the plasterboard, we add these on, and then that fills that gap along there, gives us something to fix the sterling board and the battens to on the other side, and it makes sure we've got something to pick up the corners of the plasterboard where they're on. So we do have to do the same on the other side, but that's a slightly different measurement. It's a little bit bigger than 150, so I'm going to cut those separately. So what I'm going to do now is just screw these on to this one, and then put it up, and then the other 9, or the other 7 actually, will go in really easily, and then the last one has to have the same thing done, but with a slightly different size noggin. So let's do that. Okay, so I've just fitted all of the noggins onto this joist. So now really it's just a case of lifting it up, checking that it all fits okay, and then onto the next. Let's go. Okay, so we've put the first row of joists in the first bay. As you can see, the piece where we screwed the 150 noggins to just sits in there really nice and snugly and pushes against the sterling board wall to get it into position. And then the others are all in the right place at this end. They may need budging over down that end. So we've got to cut 3 rows of noggins in here now. Also, you can see the notches in the bottom, so they're all sitting in quite nicely, and it's just a case of carrying that process on for the next bay, and then the next bay and the next bay. So let's get on with it. So I've just brought down the last set of joists that I need. As you can see, we've got 3 bays in now. None of it's actually screwed in yet, it's all just sitting in place. Some are sitting a little bit lower than the metal, which is fine because it's quite tricky cutting those little grooves out. So I've got these spacers, and I'm going to be able to go round and just put a little spacer in each one once they're all in, and I've sort of lined them up and get all the levels right, and then I'll be ready to then put the noggins in. One other thing to think about is the beams. I need to pack the beams with insulation before anything's fitted, any noggins get in the way. That's just to keep the beam warm and to help prevent condensation, because otherwise with the deck on top, although the deck won't actually be touching the beam and it's all going to be insulated, steel beams can sweat a little bit because they get very cold, and then with the cold from the outside and the heat from the inside, you can get a little bit of condensation on them. So I've got to pack that with insulation to help keep that warm, which is fine. I've got loads of 100mm insulation left that I had for the floor, and I'm going to be able to just cut bits and put those in once they're all spaced properly. So now all that's left to do is to trim these last joists, then cut the notches out. I only have to do one notch on these ones, and then that is this element of the roof done, and then it's just an awful lot of noggins. Now it's getting quite late, so I probably won't get those done today, so I'll have to do those in the next day, which won't be tomorrow because it's Monday, but whenever I get time. But it will be done as part of this section, and then I can go round and I can screw all of the edges in, all of the ends, and then we've got a really nice box to start messing around with. Excellent. Let's get this done and go and have a cup of tea. Okay, so that's the end of the day today. We've got all the structure up and we've cut all of the noggins. So now it's just a case of pinging some lines through and going crazy with the screwing of the noggins in, which is going to take quite a while. You know, it's another good day, that is, to get this completely sorted, and hopefully we can then start thinking about getting the roof covering on, which would be great, because with these up, with the roof covering on, then we're kind of weatherproof. Obviously the doors will be here in a couple of weeks, but yeah, it will make a big difference. It's keeping everything dry. Yeah, let's carry on with this in a minute. Good morning. So we're back on with the roof, and it's been a week since the last part of the video that just ended, and it's been raining all week. I've managed to get out for about an hour and get one row of noggins in, but the weather was so poor that I didn't bother bringing the camera out. So as you saw in the last part, that we've cut all the noggins, and it just so happens that the last set here that I didn't think I thought would be a different size are actually the same size as the rest of these, so that's worked out absolutely beautifully. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start marking out the positions of the noggins. I'll get the whole place marked out, line drawn either side using my square, and then start putting the noggins in. And it's really just a case of trying to get that done as quickly as possible, as we've got a lot to do this weekend. While the weather's fairly dry, I want to try and get the roof covering on, but I don't know if that's going to be too much or not, but we'll see and we'll try. So I'm going to start marking out, and yeah, let's go. So we've got most of the noggins in, except in this front row here. I'm going to need to put a few screws in from the outside just to pull everything together, and obviously on the ends as well, so I will do that in a minute. We've been insulating this gap along here, along the edges and the back edge as well, just because once we start getting the roof on, we're not going to be able to get into those, and it's really important that you get those bits because that's where cold air can escape as well. So that's pretty much all done. So the next job is, well, apart from the last couple of bits of insulation and putting some extra screws in to the joists and the noggins, is to get the furring pieces which I've had delivered and get them up on the roof, and then start spacing them out in the right place, ready for the sheets of sterling board that are going to form kind of the roof deck. Okay, let's go. Okay, so the noggins are all in. Everything's been fixed along the front, sides, back, so everything is now exactly as it should, all screwed together, all in the right place. So the next thing is putting the furring pieces on. Now these create the fall for the roof, so that the water, when it lands on it, will run either to the front or the back. In this case, we're going to have it falling to the back so that the gutter's hidden and you won't see any of that, and then the rainwater can discharge out into whatever I put out there, maybe a couple of water butts or something like that. So the furring pieces have been cut for me, and they're basically they're basically a 6x2 that has been cut diagonally from 100mm down here to nothing at the other end, and these are going to sit with the 100mm flush to the front of the shed and work their way down to the back. And we're going to put them all the way along every 400mm, so that they take a sheet of 18mm sterling board that is 2440 by 1220. So you've got to make sure your spacings are correct. So these are 45mm, so they will be going on, and then there will be a 358mm gap between each one, and then the sterling board will just drop straight onto that. Okay, let's get on with it. So we have got all of the furring pieces. I've got a spare one, but I've got something funny going on with this one. It falls in line with the beam, so I might put one either side, or I might just put one side. It depends on how the sheets of plywood are going to work out, but we've literally just fixed them in one place all the way along using a spacing beam, just bit of batten that I've cut the right length, and I just put that in each one so that we'd know that once we put the sheet of ply on the end beam or the end furring piece and it's all square, then it should just work along really nicely. So the next job is just to use the spacing battens again and just go through and fix everything down now. So I'm ready for the sterling board. Let's go. As you can see, everything is now screwed in. Took quite a long time, and but everything is nice and tight and secure, and the fall looks really nice and even, and if you look along the level, it all looks in the right place and nice and flat, so that's great. I've used a mixture of 80mm, 70mm and 50mm screws for this, depending on the thickness. Obviously the thickest bits I've used the 80mm on, the thinner bits, the sort of middle section, I've used 70mm, and then the really narrow bits at the other end I've used 50mm, so it's quite straightforward. I've made sure that the ends of the furring pieces are flush with the sterling board, that way when I put the front piece on, the front timber on to pick up the roof detail, then that will all be nice and flush, and that's it really. It's now ready for the sterling board, which will be in the next episode. I'm going to try and do the sterling board and the roof covering in one go, but that's quite a lot of work, so we'll have to just see how we get on. Thanks again for watching. Like and subscribe. Got any comments, put them below and I'll do my best to reply, and yeah, come back for the next one where we hopefully make this thing waterproof. Peace.